The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Howard Morrison, and I'm the Early Childhood Education Division. This afternoon, we'll be discussing the Early Childhood Data System. In regards to a few logistics before we get starting, all participants are in listen-only mode. Please use the question area to ask questions throughout the webinar. At the end, we will allow some time for some question and answers. We also do have Scott, who's monitoring the questions inbox as we go throughout the webinar. So welcome to the Early Childhood Data System webinar. This will be an overview of the Early Childhood Data System, and my name's Howard Morrison, and I'm a program specialist in the Early Childhood Education Division. A few of the handouts that you have through the GoToMeeting dashboard is the To the Administrator address correspondence, which is for the Early Childhood Data System for pre-K and kindergarten data submission. You will also have the data submission process attachment that goes along with that TAA correspondence, as well as the 2017-18 Section 10 of the Texas Education Data Standards that correspond to the Early Childhood Data System. So thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to a great webinar. Before we get started, let's go ahead and start with a quick poll to identify where people are within their ECDS experience. So I'm going to just launch this real quick and have you all vote through the GoToMeeting. So the poll should be open. So if you could just respond with none, some, or a lot. And we'll just allow about a minute to get through this. Looking like we're getting a lot with some, and about 28% of none and 15% of some. With still about 85% that have voted. Okay, I think that brings us to about 58% that have some experience with ECDS, 28, around 27, 28 with none, and about 14% with a lot of experience. So let's talk a little bit about the goals for today. The overall goals are to better understand the value of early childhood data, to become more familiar with the early childhood data system, and to become more aware of available early childhood education data. So let's talk about the importance of data collection. We really want to be able to enhance the ability to efficiently and accurately manage, analyze, and use education data to be able to help districts, schools, educators, and other stakeholders to make data-informed decisions to improve student learning and outcomes, as well as to facilitate research to increase student achievement and close achievement gaps. So why is pre-kindergarten progress monitoring important, and why do we collect pre-K progress monitoring data? So we collect pre-K progress monitoring data for many reasons, but a few are to evaluate academic growth, to assist families, educators, administrators, community stakeholders, and policymakers with identification of strengths and opportunities. Additionally, we want to be able to inform resource prioritization, classroom instruction, and development of action plans. All of these around the core content areas of health and wellness, language and communication, emergent literacy reading and writing, and mathematics. So let's talk a little bit about kindergarten readiness and how the state defines the kindergarten readiness. TA supports high quality pre-K that is developmentally appropriate, multisensory, and experiential. Young children thrive when provided a learning environment that inspires curiosity, builds confidence, and fosters a love in learning. And most importantly, children are ready for school when families, schools, and communities work together to ensure they enter school with strong foundational knowledge and skills. So let's talk a little bit about the core primary domains of development. So we're looking at health and wellness, language and communication, emergent literacy reading, emergent literacy writing, and mathematics. And essentially, those are both 5 academic subject areas that we look at when looking at pre-kindergarten progress monitoring and kindergarten progress monitoring. So why collect beginning of year kindergarten data? The beginning of year kindergarten data can assist educators in multiple ways. Beginning of year kindergarten data informs classroom instruction and intervention in areas where gaps in learning are evident. It's used to inform the development of strategies and targeted instruction for pre-kindergarten classroom. It also assists communities with development of action plans to provide support for young children, as well as to provide TEA with information needed to develop statewide support for school readiness. So we're going to show a brief video about the statewide longitudinal data system and how it combines data from across the state to answer critical questions about education and workforce policy. We'll be able to learn more about how these systems work and how they help states support student success in classroom and beyond. Okay, so I know we're running into a little sound issue, so let's see if we can rectify that real quick.
States and territories are working to provide better information to help their students succeed in the classroom and beyond. Statewide Longitudinal Data Systems, or SLDSs, combine data from across the state to help answer critical questions about student learning, workforce preparation, social programs and policies, and economic development. The data included in SLDSs vary from state to state. An SLDS can cover a specific part of the education to career pathway, or several parts. Many SLDSs include data from early childhood education and early care programs, K-12 schools, community colleges and four-year colleges and universities, and workforce programs and services. Some also incorporate data from health, social services, and public safety agencies. Data from these sources are securely shared. Create longitudinal records that can be used without identifying individuals. The agencies that contribute data govern how those data are managed and used. Statewide longitudinal data systems offer a number of benefits. They include data from an entire state, not just a single school district or program. Users can examine information for different geographic areas and for the state as a whole. SLDSs securely connect data from multiple education and employment programs to show the relationships among the programs and whom they serve. They also link data over time to allow users to measure progress and examine the relationships between earlier experiences and long-term outcomes. In addition, SLDSs help users examine long-term trends for different groups of students. Statewide longitudinal data systems support student and citizen success in a variety of ways. Teachers can see their students' education history and plan their instruction accordingly. They can also identify and provide additional support to students who are at risk of failing or dropping out of school. School administrators can see how their graduating classes fare in college and in the workforce. They can identify ways to better prepare students in the future by implementing programs that help teachers improve instruction, tailor student support to student needs, and revise course offerings. Post-secondary institutions can assess how well their programs align to workforce needs and how well their graduates are prepared to contribute to high-demand career fields. By reviewing information available from the SLDS, students and their families can determine which education services, schools, or degree programs will help them meet their academic and professional goals. Workers can decide which training programs and certifications will help them advance their careers based on wage and employment information from others with similar credentials. With SLDS data, researchers can help educators, policymakers, and the community understand more about the connections between education programs and student outcomes. They can help by examining trends to inform policies and programs, and answering questions related to topics like college and career readiness, or closing achievement gaps. SLDSs also support more efficient operations and better policies across the state. They help streamline data collection so that education programs can obtain data for required state and federal reporting while minimizing the burden of redundant data collections on schools and districts. Education leaders can make informed decisions about supplemental services and course offerings to maximize student learning. And lawmakers and policymakers can evaluate how best to fund education, training, and workforce programs, and how to improve the policies that govern them. The information provided by an SLDS allows states to use evidence to more effectively answer questions about their education and workforce systems, and ultimately, to better serve students and workers. For more information about statewide longitudinal data systems, check out these resources.
Okay, now that we've gone through that video, let's go ahead and initiate another poll question. And let's talk about just asking quickly how involved you are in the pre-kindergarten or kindergarten data submission process. All right, looks like the results are coming in. We've got about 78% that have voted. We've got 51% at very, that are very involved in the data submission process, 33 right now, somewhat, and about 16% at none. We've got about 84% voted. Give a few more seconds left. All right, I think we're really about 51% that are very involved in the data submission process, 34% somewhat, and 16% none. Those are great numbers. And looks like we've got a lot of users out there that are very involved in the data submission process, so that's great. Okay, let's go a little deeper into the early childhood data system overview. The early childhood data system was first launched in the Texas Student Data System in 2014 and expanded as a result of House Bill 4 after the 84th Texas legislature, and ultimately ended up leveraging data that was already collected within the Texas Student Data Systems and PEEMS. So the purpose of ECDS is to better inform families, school administrators, educators, policymakers about the effectiveness of pre-kindergarten programs in preparing children for success in kindergarten, as well as the overview, which is the statewide reporting feature of the Texas Student Data System itself. This system includes both pre-kindergarten and kindergarten student data. So let's talk a little bit about the data that's collected in ECDS. The data elements that I'm going to be listing are for the 17-18 collection for kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, which includes 3- and 4-year-olds, and private pre-kindergarten. The due date for the current collection is July 19th, 2018. ECDS collects student demographics, funding sources, special program information, which may include bilingual ESL, special education information, pre-kindergarten school type, which is looking at the type of the pre-kindergarten program, the student instruction type, the number of half-day and full-day pre-kindergarten classes, the pre-kindergarten class size and ratio. This continues to the name of the curriculum or the type of curriculum that a district or charter uses. The names of the administered pre-K progress monitoring tools and the kindergarten assessments. The high quality pre-kindergarten program indicator. The family engagement plans, which is a URL. And the additional teacher qualifications. These are all based off the pre-kindergarten program requirements and the high quality components based on Rider 78 and the beginning of year reading requirements for 28006. So the list of approved assessment instruments are for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. This is the commissioner's approved list that went through a review process and is currently available from 2017 to 2021. This includes a list for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. The first list that I've provided here is the pre-kindergarten assessment instrument list. You'll see this is broken out into 3 different cohorts, ones that address all academic subject content areas. In the middle section, that is English only, and then the bottom section, which has some English and Spanish, and then addresses some content areas. In implementing the high quality pre-kindergarten components in Rider 78, districts that serve eligible 4-year-olds are expected to use a tool from the commissioner's list of approved pre-kindergarten assessment instruments and measure the 5 primary domains of development, which include the emergent literacy reading, writing, language and communication, health and wellness, and mathematics. And it is expected that the beginning of year and end of year student progress monitoring data be submitted into the early childhood data system. The second list is the approved kindergarten reading and multidimensional instruments. This is the same layout as the pre-kindergarten. So you'll see the top cohort addresses in English and Spanish and addresses all content areas for the academic subjects. The middle cohort has a variation of approved English and Spanish in some academic contexts. And then the last cohort is available in English and Spanish, but only addresses one academic content area. For those districts that are addressing or assessing beginning of year, they must use an emergent literacy reading, and a district may also address mathematics, emergent literacy writing, language and communication, and health and wellness. This may include a single assessment or a variation of multiple assessment instruments to address those domains. But a district is required to assess emergent literacy reading. So ECDS also collects private pre-kindergarten data. And so why should private pre-K programs participate in the early childhood data system? There's multiple reasons as to why a private provider should participate. It creates stronger alignment and communication between early childhood stakeholders. It helps identify strengths and opportunities for developing effective classroom instruction and support for students and identify effective practices to implement. It builds collaboration and access to resources provided by regional education service centers. It provides the ability for that private provider to see how students perform at kindergarten entry once those students attend kindergarten and those results have been updated. It additionally provides early access to unique IDs so that those students may be able to be tracked through their kindergarten, grade 1, and first grade. All right, and if those that weren't able to access the presentation or the handouts, they are now uploaded and available, so you should be able to access those if you're having issues accessing them earlier. So those private providers, when they're applying, will have to apply through a JOT form that was released with the To the Administrator addressed correspondence letter. It's a pretty simple couple-page online form. This is an example of what it looks like, typing in the type of the program what best describes the program, whether it's a Head Start, a licensed child care, or other, the associated license from the DFPS, and if they are participating in the Texas Rising Star provider, in what star level, as well as other questions regarding the legal authority for that private provider. This would be for all new licensed child care or Head Starts that are applying. Any existing providers would not need to go through this job form process and could go through, would already have their unique org ID assigned to them. So once a provider submits this job form information and it's reviewed, that information gets sent to our business partner directory, which then in turn generates an organization ID, which is very similar to a school district or charter school organization ID. And that number is then assigned back to the private provider and then allows them to go to the next step in regards to accessing the appropriate TEAL accounts, which I'll talk about in a little bit in regards to loading the data. So the reports available in ECDS, there's a variation of reports available. There's assessment completion, assessment summary, assessment with pre-K sources, kindergarten data submission, kindergarten incomplete assessment data, pre-kindergarten data submission, pre-kindergarten completion, assessment summary, and missing data assessment. These are primarily for those data quality checks for an ECDS data user only, those that already have TEAL access, so they're internal reports to those users. And like I mentioned, they're primarily for data quality checks. One of the additional benefits would be for the private provider to be able to check the pre-K sources report to see how their students are doing in kindergarten once that kindergarten data has been loaded. So let's launch the next poll question, which is how familiar are you with the available ECDS support? This could be through TIMS tickets, TSDS regional champions, certified TSDS vendors, ECDS and TSDS support inbox, etc. So it looks like we've got responses coming in. About 67% have voted. We've got 48% at none, 38% at somewhat, and 16% at very. We're up to about 77% that have voted, so we'll hold off just a little bit. Okay, it looks like we came in about 49% that are not familiar with the available ECDS support, 37% that are somewhat familiar, and 15% that are very familiar. So that's great information to have, and I think we can help bring those that have little experience to very familiar. So let's talk about the Texas Student Data System and the ECDS data standards. So the Texas Student Data System has core collections. These are the Texas Education Data Standards, and specifically Section 10 is the state reporting section for early childhood data system. This includes public pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and private pre-kindergarten. And you'll see the link there at the bottom of the web page. I'm just going to pull that up really quickly so folks are familiar with what that web page looks like to be able to navigate to that as needed as they're going through the ECDS process. So this is the Texas Student Data System web page. This is the section under data standards. You'll see the breadcrumbs here, TSDS, Texas Education Data Standards, section 10. This includes the 2017-18 collection and the state reporting section, which is early childhood data system. And like I mentioned, this gives a delineation of the reporting requirements for this year, and then gives a breakout of the timelines, the data collected to TEA in regards to kindergarten program data, kindergarten assessment data, program data elements, assessment data elements, the approved kindergarten assessment instruments and identification codes, and then it goes into further detail regarding the pre-kindergarten data to TEA for public pre-K, public pre-K assessment data, the academic subjects, the program data elements, and the assessment data elements, and then a breakout of the private pre-K program data and private pre-kindergarten program data elements. So that's just kind of a high-level overview. I won't go through the entire document because it's pretty lengthy in regards to the code tables that are associated with the data extracts. So let's talk a little bit about the data entry process. There are 4 TSDS portal user roles needed for submitting ECDS. One would be a unique ID campus role, an operational data store, which is an ODS campus loader, an ECDS data approver, and then a TSDS incident management system, which is a TIMS. The same person may have multiple roles depending on the makeup of the individual program. But this would be the roles that would be needed to get started to ensure that the data collection is able to be happen smoothly and collected and approved in a timely manner. So within the TSDS system, there's an early childhood data system assessment matrix for pre-K and kindergarten. That assessment matrix includes the assessment title, the assessment code, the academic subject, the scoring, the grade, the score range, the benchmark, and then the vendor notes. So this is all available within the knowledge base articles within TSDS, and you'll see that's TSDS KB-508. Like I said, there's 2 matrices, one being for pre-kindergarten and one being for kindergarten. And this is very important for those that are looking at different assessment instruments that address 1 or more or 5 academic subject domains, whether it be emergent literacy, reading, writing, health and wellness, etc. It'll provide specific notes within that notes section that pertain to individual vendors. So that's really critical information to be able to view as you're going through the data collection and data submission process. So building on that, within the TSDS system, there's various knowledge base articles. So these articles are built through our counterpart within our IT division based on common questions that have been submitted through the TIMS, the Texas Incident Management System. And then these knowledge base articles are built and housed within TSDS to assist questions that have consistently been coming in. So there's a section for general FAQs, assessment FAQs, requesting and approving of teal roles, LEAs requesting S numbers to be assigned, interchanges created from the ECDS spreadsheets. The next batch of knowledge base articles cover loading for ECDS kindergarten beginning of year, loading for public pre-K beginning and end of year, a loading guide for public pre-K if there are no assessments, a loading guide for private pre-K, a private pre-K general FAQ, and then the knowledge base article that I mentioned regarding the kindergarten and pre-K assessment matrix. And then ones that show 0 assessment counts. Each regional education service center have champions housed within each region. So that includes an executive sponsor, a PEAMS champion, a dashboard champion, a unique ID champion, a TEAL champion, and an ECDS champion. Our team in the Early Childhood Education Division and the IT Division work very closely with these regional champions. They're critical to our support model and ensuring that the early childhood data is collected and gathered and submitted appropriately. So they are really our boots on the ground in supporting this early childhood data collection and do a ton of work to support their regions in ensuring that this data collection runs smoothly. And so we work with them very consistently and communicate any issues to them and assistance as needed throughout the school year. So those are your go-to contacts for immediate level assistance. Often those TIM tickets go to those regional education service centers first, and then if it's a critical item, those incident management tickets would be then escalated to our agency for review. So our IT division has recently added a new section to their compatible software page. Right now, it currently includes student information systems, HR systems, financial systems, and then assessment tracking systems. But the newest section, the assessment tracking system, now includes whether or not these assessment vendors loads to ECDS. So over the course of this year, we've been working with assessment vendors and will continue to work with assessment vendors on assisting them so that they can better assist their constituents through the data collection process. Those vendors that meet the compatible software requirements will then get added to this link, which then gives an easy view to be able to identify vendors that we know are all compatible and know the system requirements to be able to provide an XML extract and upload to the ECDS data system. So we are continuously building upon that and adding vendors as they meet those components. So we're going to go to our last poll question here. And this question is, how comfortable are you with data reports available to users? So we've got progress being made. About 67% have voted. Around 60% are comfortable with the data reports available to users. About 28 are not comfortable yet. And about 11% that are at yes. So we'll just wait a few more seconds here for that to complete. Okay, so it looks like we've had a majority of the voters here. 62% feel comfortable with the data reports, 29% at not comfortable, and 11 with a lot. So we'll go ahead and close that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the available early childhood education data. So with the increase in data collected, TA is now developing and has developed public-facing reports to display the information. TPEER, which is within our research and evaluation division, has developed the following reports listed here. There are kind of two cohorts of reports. Those that fall under pre-kindergarten, this would include 3- and 4-year-olds. And these reports are available at the state, district, and charter, and also at the school campus level. Additionally, there's a data download, and that is available at the district level, which is also helpful for those organizations that want to be able to run additional variations of the data that's available. And then the second cohort would be the public kindergarten program and kindergarten readiness reports. The same level is available there, state, district, campus, and then the data download. These are all available for 3 cohorts of years, so 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17. So we do have a good cohort of years available to kind of look at trend data over the last 3 years. So this is just an example of what the public pre-kindergarten program and enrollment for ages 3 and 4 looks like. You'll see that it's broken out in different categories, one being public pre-K enrollment, enrollment by student instruction, enrollment by ethnicity, districts that are providing pre-K, and enrollment by funding sources. So this is a high-level state report. It gets more granular as you go through. There's different sections. This is just one page of the report, and then it's more specific at the district and campus level. The kindergarten program and kindergarten readiness report includes the same enrollment, but then it also includes the readiness and results. It includes students enrolled, the number of students assessed, and the kindergarten readiness of those students. It also includes students that attended public pre-K the previous year. And then it also includes students that attended public pre-K the previous year for at least 80 days or more. And then lastly, it also includes enrollment in kindergarten readiness by ethnicity. So again, that's just the first page of the report. There's additional information as you scroll down on those public-facing reports, and then the same trend for being able to download that for each independent region and district, and region and charter, excuse me. So the resources that are available at the end of this slide are PowerPoint, the TA correspondence, which includes the early childhood data system, for public pre-K, high quality pre-K, private pre-K providers, and kindergarten data. The Section 10 of the Texas Student Data System core collections, the ESC TSDS champions, and then the ECDS program page. So this is just a compilation of all the resources. There are additional links that are hyperlinked within the PowerPoint throughout the entire slide deck, which we will also be making available once this presentation is over. We'll move on now to questions. I know there's a few that have come through, so we'll just take a moment to look at some of those. So it looks like there's a fair amount of questions here. So I think I'll answer a few that I see consistently. So yes, we will make the presentation and recording available. We will ensure that all the handouts that were included in the presentation are made available. Let's see. One is health and wellness called something else? So a lot of the assessment vendors will call this social and emotional development. However, we're encompassing that under the health and wellness domain. And so you will see that interchange or used interchangeably between the vendor and our data collection. So anything that's coded as social and emotional development would be submitted to us via health and wellness. So there's a question, are the data reports and downloads available to the general public or an organization outside of the public school? So the ones that I listed about, the ones that are regarding data quality checks, so as those districts and charters are loading data, those reports would be internal only. The T-peer reports, which have the pre-K enrollment and kindergarten readiness reports, those are available to the public. So those are available to public school districts, charters, any early childhood education organization across the state, researcher, any general public user that wanted to be able to look at enrollment or kindergarten readiness at the state, district, and regional level could be able to download those reports. So there's a question in regards to if the district implements a kindergarten assessment that's not on the commissioner's list. So if they use a kindergarten assessment instrument that's not on the commissioner's list, they would email the ECDS at ta.texas.gov inbox and identify which district they are and the type of assessment instrument that they are using within their district. So those kindergarten programs would be able to identify that. And then that would be tracked just through an Excel spreadsheet. Those districts would be expected to maintain that beginning of the year data locally should TA decide to collect that data at a later date. So there's a question about what is a champion. So each regional education service center it can get sponsored to be a TSDS champion through their executive leadership. They would have to go through a certification training program to be able to be certified as a TSDS champion for those individual areas that I mentioned, specifically the unique ID, and then as well as the ECDS data champion. If there's more specific information about that, I'd certainly be able to share that afterwards. There's another question about 3- and 4-year-olds. So 3- and 4-year-old information would be required to be submitted through ECDS. The pre-K program requirements in statute do not differentiate between 3- and 4-year-olds when they're looking at the type of curriculum, the class size, and the assessment instrument and results if administered. So if it's been administered and it's on the commissioner's list, then that information would need to be reported. For eligible 4-year-olds, they're expected to submit that information based on the components of high quality in Rider 78. So it looks like those are the majority of the questions. There's a lot here that have gone unanswered, I know. So I think the best plan of action would be able to pull these questions together, develop a question and answer document to make available to you all after this webinar is completed, and we can make that available on our educator resources page where we house all of our webinar recordings, our webinar slide decks, and then any supplemental resources within the document. So that concludes our webinar today. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining today and providing these great thoughtful questions. As soon as we've compiled this, we will be able to publish that on the website and make everyone available that those resources have been posted. Thanks again and have a great afternoon.